Hello, guys. Welcome to Reinvented. Today we have Paul. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what you do and why you're here?
Yes, my name is Paul Bright. I am a certified sleep science coach. I basically help people get the sleep they deserve the way they want it. So, a lot of people will tell you they don't sleep well at night, they suffer, they have insomnia, they either have problems falling asleep or they have problems going to sleep and waking up and not being able to get back to sleep. And I've had plenty of those experiences in my life. I had them all. And then was able to help myself through a lot of personal research and then found out, oh, you can actually get certified in this kind of thing. And so then I went and got certified as a sleep science coach and then figured out, I probably wouldn't have taken 10 years. It probably would have taken me 6 months if I knew what I knew now. So I'm doing what I can to help people out and support myself in the process.
And how did you get into sleep science?
So I was in the military for 10 years, and probably 9.5 of those 10 years I had sleep problems like sleep paralysis, where your brain wakes up but your body's catatonic, so it feels like you're being buried alive. Had insomnia, had panic attacks. I had so many problems because I worked so many crazy shifts and going through deployments and everything. But then towards the end of my career, I was able to start going to grad school for counseling. And in the midst of that, I started finding out stuff about sleep. And so I started doing my own research, doing things for myself, practicing what I was researching. And then that's how I ended up getting into it. Because once I was able to get rid of my sleep issues, 99% of them, I was like, you know what? I think other people need to find out about this because not a whole lot of people know that there's an actual holistic science to it.
And for I guess how do you help people kind of see the science behind it?
That's a really good question. So I'm able to read the peer review research. Some people will say, "Oh, I did research." I was like, "No, you didn't do the research. You read what other people researched." But I'm able to read a lot of that and understand the basics of how sleep is supposed to work, and then match it up with somebody's lifestyle. And so you can start seeing the differences. Like, oh, well, my body's supposed to be doing this while I'm preparing for sleep at night, but I'm not doing this, or this is not happening for me. In the case, like I know you told me, like you talk a lot about anxiety, and people with anxiety listen to your show. Like your brain is supposed to be moving at a much slower speeds internally, because every time you think, anything you do while you're conscious, even when you're unconscious, your brain is moving. It's generating electricity and heat. The more active things you're doing with your thoughts, the more heat and electricity get generated, and um, and you won't even necessarily know it until you can't go to sleep. There's actually enough power in your brain that can power a 20-watt light bulb at certain points, depending on what you're doing. And so when you're going through anxiety, like instead of relaxing, you're almost in that fight or flight mode that generates a whole lot of energy and electricity. Now, if you were laying in bed holding a 20-watt light bulb, could you really go to sleep? Probably not. So if it's behind your head while you're trying to go to sleep, it makes sense where you wouldn't necessarily be able to fall asleep. Or when you do wake up in the middle of the night, it's like, boom, oh my gosh, this is going on, or this may happen, or this may not happen. And then, I had generalized anxiety disorder before. I know what it's like to have one thought multiplied to 50 other things that aren't going to happen, but your brain thinks it will. And then it doesn't happen. And it's like, okay, well, it didn't happen. And it happens again the next day. So I understand it. But so what I do is I help people by going through an assessment of their lifestyle with whichever information they want to tell me within like 4 specific areas of your life. And I help people see what's working for them that's going to help with their sleep and areas that are a challenge. And then we figure out, okay, what can we do to address this part? What can we do to address that part? And that's basically how I do it.
And with maybe not with everyone, but is there at a certain point it requires maybe some lifestyle changes
Yeah.
to kind of get your brain to shut off?
Yes, absolutely. It requires most of the help that people get is interesting. It's through lifestyle changes. And I would say probably half of what's discovered happens with the assessment part, where I start asking you questions like, all right, so how do you start your day? And then it's like when people speak out loud what they're going through and when they're going through it and what they're doing, they're like, oh, snap, that could be the problem, you know? So, for example, um, your body doesn't really care when you take in what calories you take in and when you take it as far as calories go. So, let's say you need 2,000 calories a day. If you eat a 2,000 calories a day and your last meal is at 11 o'clock, your body does not care that that was the 2,000 calories. So it's going to digest and whatever, it's going to affect your weight. But what happens with your brain is when you're supposed to be asleep, almost every system is operating minimally. So your body should not be digesting a bunch of food while you lay down because it's going to start generating like, stomach acid that when you lay down, it's going to get in your throat and that may wake you up. You may have to use the restroom. You may have to do a lot of things. And so if I find out during an assessment that your last meal is at 10 and you're going to bed at 11, I might say, you know what, that's something that you may want to do like at 9, have your last meal, because that gives your body a chance to rest, digest it. If you have to use the bathroom that one last time, you go to bed, it may not wake you up 2 hours later. Because then when you wake up 2 hours later, if your environment is a triggering one that you wake up into, then it's going to be harder to go back to sleep. So those are the types of, that's just one example of a lifestyle change somebody might make to make it easier to go to sleep and stay asleep.
And I read an article like a while back, and it said it's normal to wake up like in the middle of the night. Is that true?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So what's happening is you go to the yawn when you're starting to pass out. You might even start snoring a little bit, but your senses are still active. So somebody could shake you and be like, hey, Kayla, wake up. Got a soccer match in about an hour.
Mhm.
Anything like that can happen. So you're sensitive there. And then you have stage 2, which is your body core temperature starts to drop. Your body becomes catatonic, and that's setting up for stage 3, where all the and the repair starts to happen in your body. So your blood circulates oxygen with all these growth and repair hormones. And then stage 4 happens, and that's a mix of light and heavy sleep. And that's when your memories start to form. Once that stage is over, it goes back to stage 1 where you're sensitive again. So maybe something didn't wake you during that whole time, but when you get back to stage 1, somebody's turned on the lights, the heat has changed in the room, somebody starts playing music, you could wake up and stay awake with that. Or you might wake up and sit up and look around for a little bit and go back to sleep and not even know it. Like my wife tells me that all the time. She's like, we had a whole conversation. Like, we did? I don't remember, you know. Or I'll wake up and like my shirt is in the corner because I didn't realize how hot it got. So I just woke up in the middle of my night, threw my shirt off and went back to sleep and didn't and woke up. Go. She's like, you don't remember getting. So it can happen. But yeah, it is natural to wake up. It's a matter of how you set your environment up to where that you go back to sleep.
And how do you think like sleep affects like people's mental health overall?
Oh, that's a really nice question. So the start of it actually happens when you wake up, because when you wake up, what's supposed to happen, there's what's supposed to happen, there's what actually people happens in their lives, is your production of hormones, it gets released, your serotonin, which is a hormone that, and it helps keep your mood like stable. It's not going to stop any triggers on the outside of it or stressors, but it helps keep your mood and your and keep it from going from fight to fight or flight with every little situation. It's stable. And when you wake up, some trigger your eyes to let your brain know to start releasing that. So that's something that's supposed to be released all throughout your body throughout the day. And at night, it's what also helps melatonin go into your body to help you keep into sleep. But then your endorphins, your dopamine, all that stuff is getting produced as you sleep in those deep sleep hours so that it's released during the day. So if you're able to get restorative sleep, you set yourself up to get that restorative sleep, you have a better chance of getting these hormones produced that keep you a little more, keep your mood a little more stable for the day so you can deal with stuff. And then also, if you're supporting the production of all that through eating the right vitamins and minerals at the right, and that also helps. It's just like athletes, they know there's a certain amount of protein you need to take to start building muscle and maintaining mass and whatever sport you're in. They know about creatine, they know about Well, what we don't get taught about is this is why you need vitamin B. This is why you need magnesium. This is why you need to eat to help maintain your hormone production that happens at night. That rarely gets discussed in that same realm. So yeah,
And
that's where the good sleep. If you can get good restorative sleep, that's what helps with helping support you through your mental health challenges, whatever they.
and on average, what what is like I guess maybe the minimum people need to be sleeping? Like they say like 8 hours a day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's a
Like
question that. Go ahead.
I know that it's more of like I think it's different for everyone, so I've heard,
Mhm.
but
Yeah,
just curious your
yeah.
thoughts on that one.
My thoughts are if you can go to sleep without medical support, like you can go to sleep with to take a shot of whiskey without having to take all these over the counter pills. And if you can wake up and be like, you want coffee, I love coffee, but not feel like you need to have coffee to think, to function. If you can do that and sleep soundly with like minimal interruptions, whatever that is a good start. I would say the recommended is like 7 hours, or 8 hours. It used to get worded like if you don't get those, you'll die. It's like, no, it's not true. um, I feel like between 6 and 8 of solid sleep, restorative sleep, where like you almost don't remember going to sleep and you just woke up like, oh snap, this is what I feel um is good. Like for me, I was getting 4 random hours a night for 10 years plus. Even after I got out the military, it was my brain still was not ready for like regular sleep. I now get 6.5 hours. And there might be medical professionals like, oh, well, you need another hour. I'm like, listen, you have no idea what I went through. I was like, amazing. If I go to bed at 11, I'm out by like 11:10, and I don't remember any 6:37. And great, I don't need an alarm clock or anything like that. Um, so for me, 6.5 is like my window. But 6 to 8 hours, I would say, is a good healthy amount to aim for.
And do you do you ever like I guess maybe get people who are still kind of in that mindset of like, oh, if I don't get this amount of hours of sleep, something bad
Hmm.
will happen?
Yes, yeah, all the time. In fact, it's probably why it's maybe not the most popular ideal, but like I hate the idea of tracking your sleep on your wall, tracking your sleep through your phone. The only true way to track it, because you remember I talked about like those brain waves. When
Yeah.
you're getting deep sleep, your brain is going to emit like these delta waves that are very slow and pulsating. You cannot truly track a brainwave speed unless you have like all the stuff hooked up to your head. And Fitbits don't do that. No tracking device will do that. And you can really lay still for 8 hours in almost a meditative state and never get deep sleep. And be like, oh, you didn't move. You must have slept great. It's like, no, this was trash. So it's really hard to use that. It's a good way to start, but I think using that all the way through. And so I get people that are like, oh, well, this said I had like 2 hours of sleep. I'm like, you probably had more than that. Or, oh, I had 8. I don't know why I feel this way. It's like, well, if you had 8 hours of sleep, and you might have, but you wake up sore and tired, this question I asked, you anemic? And they'd be like, oh, yeah, I am. I'm supposed to be taking my iron. I was like, the reason why you feel sore and tired is because if you don't take the iron you're supposed to, if you're anemic, doesn't get the full ability to create the regrowth and repair hormones. And it also slows down the circulation of all that. And so your muscles are not getting the repair that they need during your deep sleep. So you slept, but you weren't getting repair. So I do get people that are like, well, my tracker says I'm not getting this much, or I was told I was supposed to get this. I'm like, you got to get those fundamentals right first, of preparing yourself to sleep, and then see what happens from there. Because if you do all the things you feel like you need to do, and you only get 6 hours, but you're waking up great, then you didn't really need 8. You know. So, but
And
yeah,
what are
it is different
like
for everybody.
yeah. What are some of like the fundamentals, I guess people need to think about, like, I guess before they go to bed, like
Right.
the way they kind of like get their brain to start saying it's time for bed.
Oh, that's a good question. So one of the things I've been focusing on is how much priority people place appointments with others. If you knew that you were going to meet up with your friend at 11 p.m. tonight to go to a club or something like that, you probably have mapped out your entire day as to when you're going to take your shower, when you're going to get ready, what you're going to wear, what time you're going to get there, all these things, because you don't want to disappoint your friend and you're going to have a good time too. If people took that same mindset for sleep every night, then that would prepare them better instead of waiting till 10:58 to say, I should go to bed. That you're going to lay in bed at 11 and it's not. But if you're like, I'm going to bed at 11, which means that I got to get all my work done by 9 so that I can change into my clothes, get the house ready, and then 10 o'clock, I'm to bed with a book and blah, blah, blah. And then 11, I'm going to go to bed at 11 every night. So, like, I have a book that's out on Amazon, and I talk about this anyway with my free stuff. But the very first step in it is to commit to a bedtime. And then you set it up in a like an appointment for yourself, like you would every other appointment. That to me is a big fundamental. Is when you can commit to that at least every night, whether you lay there for 3 hours like I used to do, or it ends up being like 20 minutes, then all the other stuff will start to fall into place.
Like, what about people who, I guess, kind of like, how you had a crazy schedule? Like,
Hmm.
what about the people who have maybe who like are any, I guess, maybe any type of job who just have like some crazy schedule and they're
Yeah,
maybe not able to, at least at this time, get a
yeah,
like set time
yeah,
to go to.
yeah. That's a hard one. And it is true. It is doable. You're not going to necessarily get the sleep like the people that don't have the crazy schedules, but like I used to work 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. for a month. And then they'd be like, okay, well, we only need you from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And then it would be 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. My brain couldn't take it. Um, but if you know you're on a set schedule, because one of my clients was like that. She had to get up at 3 in the morning. So she would go to bed at 9 at night. But the things that were happening in her life made it difficult for her to stay asleep. And so you do have you can to mimic the daytime as if it was going towards bedtime. So a couple of things are like if you're going home and the sun is coming up, wearing those blue blocker shades because the sun will naturally trigger those hormones that are supposed to keep you up, but you're actually trying to wind down. If you keep the sun off of your skin because the light can keep melatonin from releasing, which is supposed to make when you get to your house, if you start, winding down the lights, and then when you get to your room, if you have blackout curtains, if you have a sleep mask, which is my favorite tool to use, then when you're actually saying, I'm going to bed, and let's say it's 11 a.m. when you're going to bed, the closer it looks like to you're winding down towards darkness, the better it is for you. You may even have to plan, like I used to have to plan, where you're only going to sleep like 4 hours at a time. You get up, you do your daytime things, and then you go back to sleep for 4 more hours. If you're in a position at your job, you can take a 20-minute power nap in your car or somewhere dark, but not like a bed. That can help you so that by the end of the day, you're not so drowsy. Most accidents that happen from people that work at those hours are not on the job, they're from on the way coming home, or they're really, really late into the night where somebody got too sleepy to do something and then something's happened. So you do have to do things differently. It's the closer you can mimic it to being like um, going to bed at night, the better. Like I had the bad habit and getting off work at like 7, I would drink a beer. I'm like, well, it's just like 7 p.m., but it wasn't, not to my body. So I had to stop doing that.
Um, and is it like, I guess, is it kind of like a mindset change? Like, I guess, kind of throughout the day to kind of get to that point?
Yeah, it is. And it's not happen in one night. But the thing is, when you do it at the right pace and progressively, the mindset change becomes the norm. Um, I, I'm sure I know I referenced like I saw you play a lot of soccer, so I'm sure for anybody that's never played soccer in their life, doing that first 2 mile run around the field was probably death. The more you did it, the more you do these drills, the more you do it, and you see, maybe you don't see it now, but then you look at your time. It's later, it's like, oh snap, I cut my 2 mile run, by like 5 minutes because you committed, no matter how painful it was in the process. It's not that much different to me with sleep. Like when you're like for me, I was going to bed when I felt like I couldn't fight the sleep anymore because I was so scared of going into another sleep paralysis attack where yes, I'm alive every time, but when it's happening, you feel like you're dying because you can't move, but you're awake, and so it feels you can't breathe. So I had to commit to, all right, you're not staying at midnight. What? And for the first 2 weeks, it was the worst. I'm laying there for 2 hours, like, why did I decide to do this? But the more I was doing it, I wasn't laying there for 2 hours. It became like 1 hour. Then it became 30 minutes. Then it became minutes. And the next thing you know, it's like I could not wait to go to bed because the attacks weren't happening as often. And like I was craving the sleep. And so I started doing everything else differently along the way. So yeah, it is a mindset. And the biggest piece I would say outside of committing to bed is not trying to perfect it to where you get those 8 hours after getting four. Try aiming for 4 hours and 15 minutes. And then it's going to be 4 hours and 17. And then if you imagine that if you only slept 2 minutes more every night than the night you slept before, within within a month, you're gonna be going from 4 to 5 hours. And then within going from 5 to 6 hours. And then in 3 months, you go from 6 to 7 hours. And that was magic. It only took you 3 months to improve your sleep to where you wanted to for the rest of your life.
And when it comes to like, I guess things like sleep paralysis, there I've heard there
Yeah.
is like different things that trigger it. Is it like you know, like I know like anxiety can be one of them, but like I guess
Mhm.
changing your sleep schedule is one of the biggest
Yeah.
probably one of the biggest reasons.
Yeah, that's it. Definitely the changes in your sleep schedule, especially if they're infrequent. I know other people that have gone through it besides me and military friends have been like EMTs that have gone through it. Um, because when I was telling you about the sleep stages, what can happen is your brain gets out of sync with your body and your lifestyle as to, okay, since we're going to bed at this time, I'm going to start winding down at this time. My thoughts are going to start winding down. But if that's different every other night, or there's a constant interruption every other night, and the interruption isn't like a cortisol inducing related one, like medical professionals will go through, or like military, where you could be woke up at any time to go do something. Then it gets harder for the brain to sync up, and so you might be physically tired and your brain thinks it's going right back to stage one, or something interrupts it, and then the two are not in sync. There are very few genetic reasons for sleep paralysis. One of them getting research on is that there are genes that are triggered to where when you're going into that rapid eye movement stage of consciousness and unconsciousness, that it's like a gentle way in and a gentle way out. Well, if one of those ways in or ways out is too fast, it gets out of sync with the rest of your body too. And so there is a genetic component to that, but that's not for everybody. Like I definitely didn't have it because I worked my way out of it. I was having sleep paralysis like once a week for 10 years. She worked down to once every 2 weeks and then a month. And now it only happens to me like 5 or 6 times a year. And when it does happen, I usually know what happened. It's like, yep, I definitely stayed up too late this day, or oh, we had this emergency at our house, and so I didn't get to sleep the way I needed to, and it's why it happened. And I get over it. I'm not afraid of it anymore.
And like I guess what is the biggest message you're trying to get out to people?
Is that restorative sleep is not something you should sacrifice in the name of success, in the name of everybody else. You can't pour into an empty cup. So take the time to invest in yourself. See it as self care. It's like the ultimate form of, no matter what your thoughts are getting more calm. you're even burning fat in your sleep when you get restorative deep sleep. People are like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, you can really.
Did it freeze again?
Yeah, I did. It's
Okay.
going to
That's what I
be
thought.
more present with yourself and with others.
Okay. Let's see. Try All right. Let's see. I have like one more question. Let me think of it that I just lost.
Mhm.
Um, I guess if you could tell if you could tell anyone about like restorative sleep and how to kind of, I guess maybe restore um their sleep, what would you tell them?
Commit to a bedtime. Start there. Commit to a bedtime like you would commit to any other in your life, or not just for you, but for anybody else. If you're like, every day I got to make sure goes off to school with a fully packed lunch, like, well, every night I got to make sure I'm going to bed at this time. You start there, it makes it a little bit easier for everything else to fall into place.
And is there anything you want to end off on?
Yeah,
That's
just work on getting the sleep you deserve. I've got a lot of free information. If anybody wants to send an email out every week, I'm on most of the socials. I don't do TikTok dances about sleep, but I do have a TikTok. But I'm on Instagram as sleep coach Paul. Again, I can drop you a link. I don't know if you post links in your show notes or anything like that. For if anybody just more on it. When you learn how something works, when you learn what the rules are supposed to be of how it works, it makes it easier to make adjustments. Try to yourself and invest in your sleep, quality sleep.
And then my last question is where, I guess, and you kind of already answered it, but where can people find you?
I'll send you a link to my link tree that has a lot of stuff. I do have a website, sleepyoudeserve.com. I'm on Instagram as Sleep Coach Paul. I have a LinkedIn if there are any, work leaders or anything that want to talk to their team about wellness. I love doing that. That's really fun. Uh, so that's really fun to do. I've done that a few times now. But yeah, you can go to my website, sleepyoudeserve.com. You can follow me on Instagram, Sleep Coach Paul. Or if Kayla has a place to place a link, you can sign up and get a bunch of free stuff from me. Free book, free to my book on Amazon, free emails every week, all kinds of good stuff. Yeah,
You can also just send me the link. I'll put it in my description
yeah,
box.
no
Yeah.
problem. All right.
Well, thank you for being on today, and thank you
Thank you for
everyone for
having me.
watching this episode of Reinvented.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.